Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. It's cold season, and by cold season, I mean like physically cold. I'm just constantly trying to keep my fingers warm as I type.
Okay.
Some people do have some diseases these days. There has been more and more people getting sick.
That's true. Yes, people are dropping like flies. Yes, I've already had my first dose of cold and flu season.
It seems too early for that, but then again, the cold weather is here in Kentucky. Sometimes it comes early, sometimes it doesn't. We discussed on the last episode, we talked a little bit about the, I guess, official beginning of winter, which we're in all cases, I guess. But yeah, people are huddled indoors and getting sick.
Yeah, you all. So where you live, Ray, you now have had already 2 snow. This is the second snow day.
It is the second snow day, as far as our local schools go, which is a little bit unusual for Kentucky, for it to be this early in the season and have 2 days of school that are already out. Not big, significant snows, but a little 2-3 inch snows, and that's sometimes as much as we would get all winter here in the central part of this state. But we've already gotten that, so I would say a good strong start to a traditional winter, maybe the Currier and Ives version of winter. I don't know.
And you're reminded, how old is Reed and his cronies?
Reed is 12. He is 12. Him and his
okay.
buddies. They're roughly the same age within a couple of years here in the neighborhood. His little group of dudes.
Squad of Goonies.
Yeah, it's the Goonie squad for real here in the neighborhood. And on snow days, I have to switch around where I am recording because, usually we like to have a quiet environment, and we don't have that on snow days. There's 6 to 7, 10 to 12 to 13-year-olds running around the house, all juiced up on all forms of caffeine and sugar, and on the euphoria of a snow day. So there's lots of emotions running through our household and lots of volume.
Well, this is that time of year where we have like a seasonal mechanism for social control of children. It used to just be Santa Claus. Well, I guess it used to be, depending on how far back we go. And then it was like Elf on a Shelf too, was sort of like a surveillance state.
Oh yeah, the surveillance. 1984.
Yeah, panoptical little dude moving around with magical abilities. But there was also from some of the cultures that still, I guess, still get down with this and historically have too, a little less more of a carrot, be good be good and you get presents, and more like don't be bad, or a devilish character such as Krampus will take you off to insert imagination of a child of all the terrible things that Krampus could do to them.
Yes.
And so, I was curious if you all grew up with mechanisms of social control via imaginary creatures, because I think I grew up with a disproportionate number of them.
I mean, other than the surveillance state that is, Santa Claus is watching you, and then we didn't have Elf on a Shelf growing up, or I would have been really nervous having an on-site snitch. I would have been really nervous, but we did not have that. But yeah, there was a certain amount of you better be good or Santa is not coming. Yeah, there was some of that in a traditional sense for sure. Absolutely. But it sounds like, Brett, that you had some other forms.
Year-round. It was not seasonal. It was not a
seasonal thing. So it sounds like you needed that extra push. Maybe.
Yeah. So there was one variation on this. So I grew up in a family of very strong, like a lot of people, a very strong matriarchal dominated culture. And my mom and her sisters, they all kind of sound alike. They have a similar intensity and penchant for scaring children. And so one of them was this person called the Toe Woman, who if you got out of bed, or you were out of bed after, bedtime without, permission, or this woman came and you could hear her coming for the sound of this clickety clack of a necklace made of the bones of children's toes who did not stay in bed.
Wow.
The Toe Woman.
That was one. Woman. Okay,
there was another guy.
That's terrifying. It really is.
Yeah, it feels very old world.
Yes.
There's another guy called Mr. Dump that was like, I don't know exactly. Again, the key with these things is to give the children just enough to set their imagination in motion and let their imagination then act back upon themselves. Again, I mentioned Foucault, the theorist, would have a field day with this, internalizing the surveillance state into the. I was a cop's kid already. I had nightmares about Saddam Hussein as like the boogeyman in my closet. I was already gone. But Mr. Dump was another one that he frequented our local pool, and if you were, drifted too far away and, you were out of sight, out of whatever. And it was one of those things where, like, if you were acting up, so, the mother in charge would say, oh, I think I see Mr. Dump over there. And you would turn and look. And of course you wouldn't see him, but it was like, I saw him, but then he was gone. And so when I came across Krampus, like probably in college sometime, just before the whole big movie and everything came out, I was
By
like,
that time, you
whoa,
were like,
this
"That
is
guy's
from
nothing."
my cultural frame. And this guy seems a little tame, honestly.
Mhm. I was gonna say, by that time of your life, he probably seems like he was an amateur. Him and Mule
Yeah.
Cat and Mule Lads and all the other,
Mm-hmm.
holiday beasties
And
from around the world, they probably
the
didn't
guy,
seem so
Black Peter
intimidating.
Schwarzenegger, from like a German Austrian kind of influence. I was like, yeah, this punitive approach to childhood control feels familiar. And uh but I don't know. I like, there's something really cool and folkloric about it, and there also is something deeply disturbing about it too.
Yeah. Well, they say fear is a good motivator, so I guess it's, especially so with children maybe in
It
their
is.
formative, stages, I guess, of their lives. Object terror is a good motivator. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, and I think too that, like, with a lot of these scary things and different ghosts and goblins and other things too, one of the things, this is something that people are inviting in to their mythology and their worldview to use to keep children in line around Christmas. But there's also times people want to scare those creatures away, and one of the things that they would typically maybe do would be to burn some sage, which is an herb. But, like, how are you going to do that in the middle of winter? How are you going to have herbs on hand in the middle of winter to
I see
exorcise
what you're
the
doing here,
demons and
Brett.
the other
Yeah.
creatures?
Just,
Do you all have any
just
sense of that?
chef's kiss, Brett, on the transition. Just chef's kiss.
Brett he was leading us to this point the entire time of
I'm so impressed.
indoor
As
herbs.
as always, I am. But that extra kick of caffeine you had earlier it's working for you.
I mean,
We're back.
I
And
feel
we're
like
back.
Brett always works on a roadmap. He's always has if he were the A team, he would definitely be the one making the plans. I'm just saying.
Mm.
Brett, you have a master plan. So well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah,
Well,
so
the
how might we grow some herbs during the middle of winter time?
Well,
indoor herb gardens.
yeah, we're always trying to think of things in the wintertime to do in horticulture, and that's one of the things that you can do. I don't do that a whole lot unless I have an existing herb pot that, like a perennial herb or something that I bring in. Sometimes I do that, but yeah, you can grow herbs indoors. Do you guys get into any of that yourselves? Um, herb
I
like windowsill
had
herb gardens?
I had a little mini aquaponic system at one time that
Hmm.
was just like a fish
Of
tank
course
with
you
a
did.
beta in it, and it had I got it for Christmas one year,
Yeah.
and so I was able to do some herbs up on the top of the fish tank that way, and it was pretty
Mhm.
cool. Herbs and sprouts and those types of things. I just did the annual version of it, but yeah, it was fun
Yeah.
and had its own like light source and all that kind of stuff. It was very all encompassing for plant health.
Yeah, I've worked with master gardeners, and I didn't give this much thought, but the perennial herbs, some of those that they've had for years and years, and they would bring those things in and outside, and they would have some herbs 15, 20 years old, the same group of herbs, perennials that they described the situation to me where they protected them for all those years and were careful, and they had them in a larger pot. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they did a great job, but they when they brought them inside, they stressed to me that with indoor herbs, I mean, most of the common herbs that I think of when I think of herbs that are appropriate to bring inside. They're all from the Mediterranean region of the world, right? Which means a couple of things: lots and lots of sunlight, and usually rocky, drier soils. So anytime I think about plants and bringing them inside, and I think we discussed this on several earlier episodes, is the first thing you think about is, well, what's the native growing habitat of those plants? So lots of sunlight and, drying out in between waterings. That's kind of their native habit. But the sunlight is the thing that gets me when bringing herbs indoors. It seems like that's the biggest hurdle. There is getting enough light in the wintertime. Even if you have a south facing window, it still presents challenges. And sometimes you just have to add that extra sunlight, it seems like.
Yeah, you really need the supplemental. But from the Mediterranean herbs in the pots, like I'm thinking rosemary, lavender, maybe some sage.
Yeah.
Or there's some other ones that maybe thyme. Thyme can be a perennial depending on the species of it, as far as keeping it planted outside. But I've seen where people bring those into like a garage setting, so it's not necessarily, they just kind of let them go dormant, but they're trying not to expose them to the real harshness of winter, but they're letting them get cold, versus something like that needs warm weather, is a true annual, like a basil or something, would be something you would bring indoors, keeping it warm, lots of extra light, and it's continually growing.
Interesting. So when you all said indoor herb gardening, I wasn't imagining something that started its life outside. I was imagining like starting the seeds and them growing, like it living most of its life
like
indoors
basil is a good
from
one.
the jump.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basil's one of them that we've done before, of just it's kind of like a house plant you grow from seed that you throw a couple of leaves, they're pretty powerful. But one of the things I think in general with the indoor gardening stuff, and we talked about it as winter, but it's important to remember too that like there's some people, they live in apartments, or they in some way that maybe there's a mobility concern or something, and like you can do the indoor plant stuff regardless, year round, whenever whenever you can make it work. But I think sometimes like it's just so tempting to rely on the great powerful sun and seasonal cycle and just grow so much stuff outside during the year that the indoor stuff, it's a patient gardener's game.
100%.
And sometimes those Instagram ads with, I bought this, pop-up plant grower and now I grow all the vegetables that I eat.
I've been getting a lot of those lately. The big wall. She's got like a whole wall, and she's like, I have 200 vegetable plants on my wall. And I'm like, do you?
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, it is. Our expectations are, set by the best part of our growing season. Long days, in the summer, lots of sunlight, lots of warmth. And we, usually it'll dry out in between waterings unless we're giving supplemental waterings, to make it more consistent. But yeah, you bring those things on the inside, Brett. That's a great point. And like basil is a good one. You can, grow basil on the inside, no problem. But when you pinch that, the regenerative nature of basil, which responds awesome to pinching, it just doesn't grow as fast on the inside, even though I give it supplemental light. And we're not talking about professional lighting kits, super high, discharge type of lighting kits. We're talking, things accessible to homeowners, but the basil is going to grow slower, and not only grow slower, but I've noticed over the years, and I thought it was me at first, but now I don't think so because other people have mentioned it, the intensity of flavors. Have you guys ever noticed that? If you're doing like cilantro or even like parsley, some of the other annuals, basil's still going to taste like basil, but like even the intensity, the growth rate's slower, and even the intensity of flavors isn't what you would get if it were to be grown outside in the summertime.
It is more intense and more flavorful than dried basil is.
Yes, good point.
And that's the thing. So I realized I started us down the path of being like, well, indoors not as good as outdoor because the power of the sun is more powerful than this little light bulb that we
different expectations.
So you have to adjust your expectations and be like, compared to what if I put this plant outside right now in 27-degree weather, the one inside's doing pretty good compared to that. And compared to shaking it out of the shaker, or if I'm out, running out of basil now. But I about the intensity thing, I don't know if that's like I I have no actual hard information here, but I do have enough to speculate wildly about what that might be. That maybe there is sort of like a health component where the thing isn't growing as vigorously, it's not as strong, so it's not producing some of those compounds that are probably there not to taste delicious to you and me, but to taste weird and off-putting to insects or others.
Yeah.
That's one potential. It could be that also they're growing slowly, so the compounds are just accumulating more slowly as well.
Probably in soulless media even. I mean,
Yeah,
you're not, you're not getting that mineral profile of natural mineral-based soils. But, once
Yeah.
again, Brett, your point is well taken, is that fresh basil that you nip off I mean, it's still gonna be as far as, it's gonna be a superior product to me,
Plus,
that you
it's
can grow
just
inside.
there's like a mental, like having that like green thing that you're like fresh thing that
Mhm.
you're eating, even if it's just like a little bit of something, just always feels a little bit better. There's a little more life in there.
hmm that's what I remember. Whenever we talk about stuff like this, it reminds me of being a kid and like thinking about and learning about the space stations and other space missions where they would grow like
Hmm.
hydroponic plants. And it
Hmm.
wasn't because they were incapable of taking enough nutrition to do, but like seeing something grow and having it grow and even eating from it, as you're saying, Alexis, it has this this more ineffable, um,
Yeah, there's
hard to pin down positive effect on the psyche and the body and everything
yeah.
else.
Because like I've have houseplants, lots of houseplants. I've always had houseplants, and so yes, there's that like special of the green things, the warmth of the green things, especially when I'm seeing snow outside. But then like if I have some herb plants or something inside, that next step of like being able to harvest and eat from it is just there's just like another layer of joy and something to that, I think, beyond just the regular house plants that's going on. Cat grass is a really easy one. It's not necessarily an herb we think about a lot,
Your
but
cat may enjoy it.
yeah. Well, I was I remember the year that when I was in horticulture club at UK. In the spring, it was like one of those years where Easter was super early, so it was still really cold outside, and so we're all itching for green things. And so the Hort Club grew these little things that they look like Easter baskets, but they put cat grass in them, really lush, really full. It's for your cat. It's not for me. It's for my cat, but they're like bringing that inside for the cat, like having that green, fresh, just like smell to it, and then watching the cat get all excited about it. And there was just, and it was that's such an easy thing to grow like any time of year. And it grows so quickly that you don't need a ton
Mhm.
of supplemental light. So it's like instant gratification. It's like hitting the order button when you fill your card up and you're like, yeah, yeah. That's what some of these herbs are for me. It's like almost instant gratification in a way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of I mean, basil is one that I do like growing that fresh. Like you said, instant gratification. I need that, something that grows fast. But when you
It's
said that, it
fast.
really made me think about the way that I use a product that's not really an herb. And we've talked about it before on the podcast, and that's microgreens. Because you're growing broccoli or sunflowers or alfalfa. What I mean, there's lots of things you can grow as a microgreen. But I never
Herbs
thought about it. But
included.
yeah, herbs included. Microgreens are one of those things. Instant gratification. It has it in spades because 7 to 12 days. I mean, you have a crop that you're harvesting, and that's something that's just green, growing in the windowsill. Doesn't take a lot of sunlight compared to a lot of herbs. But I use those just to get flavor in the wintertime. Uh, depending on what I'm growing. But there's that herb kind of component to
Mhm.
microgreens,
Ooh,
and I
you know
guess
what
I
another
include those like, or I include those in,
yeah.
like, the herb category, yeah,
Yeah, it's that indoor growing herbs
yeah.
are just kind of one of the easier ones, I think, from like an edible standpoint. Herbs are an easier one.
Mhm.
But one we haven't mentioned yet that's a perennial and you should be wary of, but is great for indoors is mints, different types of mints.
Yeah,
Specifically, I think
that's
the peppermints and spearmints, they're like a smaller
mhm,
leaf. They don't have as much hair. They're not as pubescent. So I think that like takes some
yeah,
of this energy away. And there's some of the better ones to eat. But mint is really easy. If you know somebody with a mint plant, guess what? You can also have a mint plant because it roots so easy in
Yeah.
water. And then, yeah, it just doesn't take a lot. It grows pretty fast. A supplemental light would surely help, but isn't, I think, honestly, in a window, it'll get pretty leggy, but it would survive.
Mint's
And
one that
yeah,
the master gardeners mentioned that they grew that was older, really old, but
mhm.
it was in a
Yeah,
larger
yeah.
container.
Because
They
you should
did
not
tell
plant
me
it in the ground
yeah, you wanna
unless you're
cordon
going to
that
mow
off.
around it
Yeah,
like I do.
yeah. Yeah, but that's one, Alexis, that I keep forgetting about, but that's one they referenced was mint, and they said, well, most of their herbs, they were growing in 6-inch pots, but they specifically told me for mint that if you're gonna have it, for a long period of time, put that in a larger pot if you plan on bringing it in and out, but yeah, that's a good one. Mint is
Mhm.
one of those kinda low
And like,
maintenance
it's
sort of
that
things.
freshness that you can add to dishes or drinks, like we're all
Yeah.
trying to drink more water this time of year, probably because
Mhm.
we're all drying out, as I've said multiple times before. But you can infuse your water with it and you get that kind of freshness. There's just like a lot of applications, I think, for mint, and it's just such an easy one to have inside.
Mhm.
Make you a little mocktail, a little Christmas drink, whatever, New Year's Eve drink.
It's good stuff. Chives are one that I always forget about too, that's another
Oh
perennial.
yeah.
Chives are, I would say, on the easier scale. I'd put those kind of with mint, and chives are something that you could put in a lot of different things, like that lemon
Mhm.
balm. Same thing, lemon
Mhm.
balm you can do. It's been a long time since I've done lemon balm, but I really love the lemony kind of
And
zesty
it's
sort of
because
stuff in the
it's
wintertime.
in the mint family, right? Lemon balm is.
Yeah, I think so.
So
Hmm.
it's got a nice square stem on it, so
Yeah,
it's easy
yeah.
easy to grow as well. Basically, if it has a square stem, it's probably easy to grow. We keep saying basil's easy to grow. Guess what? Basil's in the mint family. So
Anything with a square stem, by definition, is a mint.
yeah.
Uh,
Do you think that the mint family refers to the black sheep of the family as the lemon balm of the family?
mm, could be,
I don't
Brett. You could
know.
be onto
I don't know if it
something.
would be that one. What would
Something to think about.
I mean, like henbit, purple dead nettle are both in the mint family as well.
Mhm.
They're like
So
more like a quirky ant, like
yeah, okay.
just like fun.
That's maybe viewed as,
A
positive
little bit of a
quirky.
nuisance sometimes when
Followed
they're
followed
around too
Pearl
much.
Jam in the '90s or something. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, for us, I mean, oregano does really well in our garden. It almost like it. Sometimes it feels like almost like mint, where it's just taking off and taking over and spreading and everything else. And I'm thinking too, like if you are going to cook with stuff, we've mentioned basil. Now I've mentioned oregano, chives. You could make work, and if you had a rosemary plant, you know what is it? Boom! You got a stew going. You
Yeah,
got a sauce going.
yeah,
Uh,
that's the big
yeah,
stuff. Yeah, you could
decanted
do a
some
whole
tomatoes, or you got to
recipe
get
or
your hand
2.
on some that, and like once every couple of weeks, you can make a fresh herb sandwich, fresh herb sauce going through the winter time with oregano, basil. I mean, you could put all this stuff in. It depends on how herby you like it, and I think it's also an excuse to get a little more familiar with those flavors and maybe experiment with them in different dishes. I could even imagine a little bit of mint in a tomato sauce working
Mhm,
pretty well, but
mhm.
I made a funny face because I don't like mint. Like I don't really like infused water flavors at all. It's just I don't know. I
Like,
don't know
you don't
what
like
it
lemon
is.
in your water or anything?
Not really.
Huh.
Not lemon, not cucumber. What in the heck are we doing? Why don't I just eat the cucumber
It's
because it has so
it's
much water
mostly just
in it?
water
It
anyways.
is
Yeah.
water. Cucumber is water. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's fine. I love when people do it. I'm happy for them. And like, I do understand some people want a little flavor and it encourages them to drink more water. That's,
A water
I just,
purist, huh?
I'm not a pure, yeah, I guess I am. I guess I am. But I don't have,
It's
like, I
nothing but
just
the
like the
water.
lack of taste of water or the taste of water or whatever you want to call it. But, yeah, so we've said basil, we've said rosemary, thyme. This is like are
Parsley,
you
chives.
are you going to Scarborough Fair? Listing them
Mint.
off. Mint, parsley. Did we say parsley?
Somebody
No, I
said
don't.
parsley.
I've
Oh,
seen
I
people do
didn't say.
parsley inside before.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I have trouble with germination sometimes on parsley.
It's the one that
Parsley and
does better with lower
cilantro,
light. It doesn't take a lot of
yeah.
light,
Well, and
as
parsley
much
and
light.
cilantro tend to like to be a little cooler when they start, which can, aid if you are doing some winter growing or even inside. Like if you're growing it inside any time of the year, it's often, like cooler in the summer in your house. So they prefer to have a cooler start. So that could be beneficial to you as well. That's where a lot of people mess up because they see the cilantro and the parsley out in the stores for in Kentucky it would be May, right after our last frost. Really they should have been planted weeks before and then they bolt really quickly and you don't get a lot of parsley and cilantro. So here's your tip. They prefer to be cool, so plant them in April.
So as far as citing things, not citing your sources with a C, but citing your plants with an S. Is this the same as houseplants? Is it different? Is it what's the vibe on like where we might
Shoot.
want to put stuff? And you're saying some stuff cooler, some stuff warmer. I'm assuming that's within the realms of what we keep our houses at. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I would say the golden rule is what I've always experienced is the brightest window as you can find, and then add light on top of that, especially for
Mm-hmm.
like, we mentioned basil, even parsley, which doesn't take as much sunlight as basil, not nearly, it's more tolerant, but even that I find does better in the brightest window I can find. And then I add 12 hours of supplemental light on top of that with some sort of
Mm-hmm.
timed light.
Yeah.
That as far as looking for a location to put those, Brett, a sunny windowsill around patio doors, a sunroom if you have it, just as much sun. Because once again, remember, we're talking about Mediterranean plants for the most part, sun lovers, sun lovers.
Unless you get a draft because you have old windows or old doors. In
Yeah,
that case, for those you know, herbs that you tend to see in the summer, such as basil, I'd rather you put them somewhere else, but give
yeah,
them, supplemental lighting that way. My house is very
yeah.
drafty, so I have to be careful about what I put in the windows and closer to the doors. So I'll
Sun
put
and
them
heat
against.
lovers, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So just in the winter time, especially, that's going to be important.
Mhm,
That and then also don't we say it with houseplants. I mean, essentially, your herbs are now houseplants, right? So don't overwater them.
mhm.
Like Ray has said multiple times, a lot of these are Mediterranean plants. You're going to let them get a little bit dry before you go in and water them, and that's going to help with flavor, but it's also going to help them from rotting. That's going to be
Yeah.
pretty important. So.
That's why if you oversize the pot, a lot of these herbs we're talking about today, a 6-inch pot is fine. That also
Mhm.
allows them to dry out in between waterings. If you get too much of a volume of a high quality potting soil, it can work against you. It doesn't want to, especially you have to be very careful of using potting soils with moisture modifiers in them because
Yeah.
herbs do not like those because they stay moist in between waterings. And a lot of these herbs, the roots will just rot on those. And the same goes for you have to be kind of careful of potting soil and mixes that are infused with some sort of fertilizer.
Mm.
Because in the wintertime, herbs need less fertilizer, just like our house plants. And you're talking about a very light application of fertilizer every 4 to 6 weeks. If the label says X amount, you cut that in a half or a third for herbs
Mhm.
growing on the inside. And it goes back to what Brett mentioned earlier that the growth rate is slower in the wintertime. So, yeah, you need less fertilizer and you got to be careful with the volume of mix that you're using to grow your herbs
Mhm.
in.
If you brought in your herbs from the outside, and again, you're at the point now where you're like, maybe it doesn't look quite right or whatever. The benefit about herbs is if they're the ones that you're eating, you're kind of doing some natural pruning to them. So don't be
Yeah.
afraid to take some off. Like what I have this variegated basil that's very upright. It's called a columnar basil, so it's very upright, and so it is edible, but it's more for cuts. Basil is actually a good cut for cut flower production. Anyway, so it's a nice variegated upright. I have mother plants that I take cuttings from, but those mother plants that I put outside and then I'll bring indoors for the winter, I cut way back. Like I mean we're talking like there's one little chunk of leaves still there for multiple reasons, insects, all kinds of stuff. But that allows them to start reflushing once we start
Yeah.
getting past the winter solstice and we get light coming back. And then I'll take cuttings of that. But if you're using it to eat, then you're kind of naturally doing some of that pruning, but you don't have to be extra careful. They don't need a ton of foliage, even with supplemental light this time of year.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about plants with the leaves in particular is that leaves are both an asset and a liability. In the sense that they need water, they need nutrients, they need things to support them. There are also solar panels that allow the plant to photosynthesize and to
Yeah.
move water through its system. And so it's this balancing act between
Mhm.
sometimes plants lose leaves because they can't afford to have them right now. Doesn't mean the plant's
Yeah.
dead. It's just like I can't keep that going. And a lot of times, especially in the transition from
Yeah.
peak sunlight, peak time of year to like, well, the sun's not out that much anymore. So having these extra solar panels and keeping them going is not worth the
Mhm.
squeeze. And so they're not, we like the things to look beautiful and stay green all the time and look healthy, unless it's going to be a beautiful autumn color and then fall off and we don't have to rake them up. Um, and it's just not that they don't have that kind of internal sensibility about their aesthetic that we do,
Yeah.
which is kind
I
of
always
cool.
go back to when you take cuttings, it's sort of like the similar
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it. When you take a cutting from a plant that you're going to root, you take almost all the leaves off because those leaves lose water and the plant will try and feed those roots, or those leaves, but it has no roots. And we want it to focus on root production. So we leave just enough amount of leaves to help it get enough nutrients and photosynthesize to produce the roots, but we take off you take off flowers and stuff like that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a similar concept of when you're
Yeah, totally.
bringing in winter plants. But if you're starting them from seed, you're not going through that, but you are going to get a slow start. And I think the most important part of anything when you're starting it from seed, unless it's a microgreen, your light needs to be close to where the plant is.
Yeah.
So
Why? What happens if it's not, Alexis?
they will stretch looking for that sunlight, and it is not pretty. And those plants, if they stretch too much, they don't recover from that. They're just
Yeah.
like lanky and white, and you're like, what's going on? And I can tell you, like, a couple inches is what you're looking for. The distance between the light and wherever the top of that plant is, whether it's half an inch tall plant or a 10-inch tall plant, the light really only needs to be a couple inches, like no more than 6 inches from that seedling or plant, whatever it is. So
Yeah,
don't
the correct distance feels a little
too
absurd,
close.
especially when the
Yeah.
plants are really young.
Yeah.
Like because if you ever go and watch people who grow, like they'll grow stuff. We haven't talked about this, but there are these things called grow tents,
Mm-hmm.
and those are used in a variety. Some people do actually use them. A lot of people use them for cannabis production,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also use them for vegetable production. You can use them to
Mm-hmm.
keep your house plants happy in the summertime. And it's literally like this tent thing, and it's got a lot of them have shiny insides, and there's a light
Reflective.
inside, and there's a fan that's circulating stuff. It keeps humidity high. There's lots of stuff all over YouTube about how to use these. And one of the things that's striking about it is like, whoa, that light is crazy close to those plants,
Mm-hmm.
because that little tiny light, it only, a couple of inches, is that level of proximity. It's crazy to think is the same or not even quite as strong or as effective as the sun 93 million miles away.
Yeah.
It's like you got that light the perfect distance, and our species and all of the species that rely on the sun, which is pretty much everything, we also happened to get the exact perfect distance away from the sun. That's pretty cool. Sometimes they're a little too close, namely during summertime when we sort of tilt
Yeah.
back. I'm like,
Us,
a little
all of us
close.
pale kids on the podcast are like, we're feeling a little close to the sun right now. I'm gonna need to
But
cover
yeah,
up with some things.
leggy transplants are they're so sad because they get leggy. They don't have no structure to support them. They fall over. They're touching the soil. They rot. They
Pitiful.
die. It's just
Yeah,
it's
there's no
tough.
coming back from that. Yeah, once
Yeah,
they flop
there really
over,
isn't. You've just wasted time. Start over. Like
And that
I
super leggy.
I have trouble with high temperatures do that too. The sunlight is the biggest
Mhm.
factor, obviously, but at the office, I keep turning down when we grow transplants, like for master gardener projects or community programs. I'll turn the temperature down at night for a lot of common vegetable transplants when it's time to start those. And somebody
Mhm.
will invariably go through and turn that back up from 62 up to like, why is this so low in here? If they're there at night, and they'll turn it back up to 70 some. And I'm like, you're making my transplants leggy because, temperature
Mhm.
and sunlight. Yeah, it's like you got to control those variables. And this, that's kind of a universal sort of concepts that we're talking about that Brett threw out there for just
Yeah.
plant production in general, especially for young
Luckily, like
plants.
a lot of the time, your houses will. Again, I live in an old house, so maybe this is just me, but our house will fluctuate, or we do turn a temperature down like at
Yep.
night when we go to bed.
Mm,
So it's sort of
yeah.
the set natural. But yeah, if you've got, if you're in an office situation, that makes sense on a heat mat or something.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's the heat mats when you pull that off and you're done germinating and you enter the growing phase. Just after germination, that's when temperatures. There's daytime temps and nighttime temps, and if you really get into it, as Brett was talking about, you'll start to pay more attention to variables like that. Whether you're growing, annual herbs or just transplants in the wintertime, those are
mhm.
universal things that you pay attention to because certain plants like it much cooler at night than they do in the day. Some don't mind if the temperature's the same. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes into play too when you like are trying to start mixed flats of different
Oh
things.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like these guys are really happy and their neighbors right next door are really not happy about the situation.
Mhm,
I guess that's the
yeah.
way
Every
to
year,
hedge. It's like
yeah,
that's how you become
every
a
year I
basil. That's how
think
I
I
became a
can
basil
mix.
person.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
can mix flats, and every year I go, "Why did I do that? I know better." So,
yeah,
It just when you get to a certain size or even just level of convenience, or maybe you just only have a certain amount of space, you got
yeah,
to kind of say, well, I guess I'll make everybody a little unhappy and hope that
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
It's working for us on Earth so far
yeah,
as
it's
So far
humans.
fun.
so good. And
Um,
I've even noticed you mentioned fans, Brett, that and I watched especially with like the more commercial microgreen producers or producers that produce on a
Mhm.
scale to sell. They have fans there, and that makes sense to me. Keep airflow, and I think of pockets of relatively high humidity you're trying to eliminate. But like growers of microgreens are like, well, yeah, it's that plus more than anything, it makes the stem strong and straight and stocky to have that
yeah.
Yeah.
little bit of movement. So it's amazing
Pet your
that in
plants.
yeah, I mean,
Can you all
you
talk
want them
about
to
that?
move.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? As far as
Oh,
just them moving?
I
Alexis
always
said
tell
pet
like
your plants, and you said, what is this? Is that
Yeah,
something
I
that
wanna
this
hear what
it's
Alexis was
it's
gonna
a
plant
say.
people maybe don't realize other people don't know about that?
Um, so I always a fan is the same. It's the same concept, and so a plant in nature, right?
Yeah.
When it grows, it's outside and naturally experiencing wind movement or animals moving the branches or
Mhm.
stems or whatever it is. So that plant senses that movement and will naturally lay down more cambium layers, which are the cells along the stem and the branches, to make that thicker so that it's
Mhm.
not, it's flexible, but it's not going to, fall over. And
Mhm.
so the same concept is, used in transplant production, whether that's rooting cuttings or mostly seedlings, you'll see this, but a fan will simulate that wind movement. And so that just slightest little wiggle will beefen up that stem of your seedling. I like to pet my plants because I think it's fun. And I just literally run my hand over the top enough that I'm kind of bending that
Mhm.
stem a little bit, even when they're real small in their first leaf stage. But I just go through and give them a little pet. Hey girls, how you doing? And and just go from there. But yeah, it helps beef up those stems so that along with good light, proper heat, and things like that, you get some nice strong stems that will support all that leaf growth you want.
It's
It
good
makes me
stuff.
think of like the way that we know that resistance training, weight training, builds
Mm,
strong bones. That it's like
Yeah.
this.
yeah,
Give it a little something, a
A bit
little
of
bit of a
load.
micro
Mhm.
stressor to bounce back from, and then in turn, you have strength long term. It's like becoming funny after being bullied as a kid. Like all the
That's a
I don't know if
muscle
they
you have
were.
to build, Brett.
it's
I mean, don't bully
it's about
people, but
resilience here. Yeah. Uh,
we've all of a sudden we're talking. We went from herbs to universal plant truth. I feel like, and
Mhm.
it's a good direction to go in. It especially in wintertime when we're thinking about things like indoor plants and what they need, and really that's what we're trying to do is mimic where they came from and how they developed and what they expect, in their native environments. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's so
would say
cool.
as a person who has started plants at home scale, inside in various different locations and formats and other things, until you are pretty experienced with doing it, have a little bit of a backup plan and don't go
Hmm.
all in on it. So like what I mean
Mhm.
by that is, let's say you want to do some basil and inside this winter. That's amazing. Get some seeds, get some media, try to start the stuff. See how it goes. But also see if you can figure out a place to maybe get access to an herb plant that's not a basil plant that's already
Yeah,
started, it's already got some
yeah.
strength, etc. Same way, if we're just now in December, but here in a few months we're going to be looking and doing our seed pack math and saying, okay, I want to be able
Mm.
to plant in May. In order to do that, I need to start my transplants. Do that. Get some stuff. Don't spend hundreds of dollars on seed and supplies and everything else the first time if you haven't done it before. See if that's an enjoyable experience for you. See if your space
Mhm.
works for it, because starting seeds outside of an actual greenhouse environment is actually really
Hmm.
pretty darn difficult.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
I
agree.
know grandma and grandpa did it in their basement with a 60-watt incandescent bulb, and that's because they had a lot of magic on their side that I just don't have, and I think some other people don't have. So
And
I would just
sometimes it's
say,
not fun to, like, place a bunch of
not,
little tiny seeds. Not everybody likes a tedious thing,
and then
to
keeping them
do,
alive, and then
and
then you're like,
then
Yeah.
oh, it
yeah,
germinated
and then
great.
we
Well,
have to water
now
them.
everything else sucks, because now you have to water them. You can't water them too
It's
much. You have to water them, because, and I've
Yeah,
started some stuff that's kind of finicky and complex, and I get that.
mhm.
I'm not just starting simple stuff, but I don't think you have to start everything from the very beginning of the seed process in order to have fun
absolutely not.
growing plants inside. And if you have that hang up like I once did, let go of the ego, get over it, and support a business that is starting the plants.
Mhm.
Look at it that way. But I
I
just
think
think
it's more
that, like,
fun, yeah.
if
Buy the
all you've
plant.
tried
Learn to
is
take
seeds,
cuttings.
do something. Yeah, try something else. If it's frustrating, because maybe I'm already projecting my frustration trying to start some seeds this
I, I
spring. But
I love it, Brett, because when we started this conversation, my mind was not on really starting herbs from scratch. On the
Mhm.
inside, it was more or less buying a start that's already in a 4 or 5 inch pot. I yeah, that's a great point because I was
that's
not
called
thinking
wisdom,
of
Ray.
starting. I mean, I've been there and I failed a lot. I should know better, but
Mhm.
I mean, it's just hard to we even though you may know the technical things that need to happen, it's hard to mimic that inside of a home that's got its own I mean, my wife would probably complain if I had it 62 degrees inside the home, and it's
I
hard
would
to
not
mimic
be
those
pleased.
things. Yeah, it's tough. So that's a great point. If you want to have success, sometimes it's just easier to buy a plant and that's past the seed starting and juvenile stage and just harvest it. Focus on harvesting
Mhm.
Well, because
that
it's
thing. Yeah.
when you try to start a seed, not to over anthropomorphize, but when you try to start a seed, you're trying to convince this little biological investment that a previous plant made that the conditions are good enough that you can come out and you can thrive and you can do well using just that little savings account that your mother plant gave you. It's much easier to convince a plant that's already grown, already invested some stuff, already has much more, has a job, it's got sleeves, it's got some
It's
other,
a
to
career
keep
path.
living than it is to convince
Got
that
his
little
driver's
thing
license.
to get started outside of ideal conditions. Because you're not really going to ever create Mediterranean ideal conditions inside of a house from the 50s or earlier in Lexington, Kentucky. You're just not going to do it. And I think that once you accept that into your heart, speaking to myself, and let go of that ego and pride a little bit and just lean into, this is amazing that I'm growing this plant inside and it smells nice and it's fun. I don't
The
know. I'm
best
not trying to
plant
get too
people
philosophical about it, but
grow in multiple ways. So they're
definitely.
not all doing seed, they're not all doing cuttings, they're not all doing whatever. They're doing multiple things and they know their strengths and weaknesses. So
And they bury their failures deep in the backyard.
yeah, yeah, that's why we grow so many plants. So when they die, it's just like, anyways.
I mean, you as a gardener, I think it's gardeners are inquisitive souls, I think, and there's this probably, at least for me, that I always want to try things on the fringe. So if I'm not failing, am I even trying?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Remember, you are compost, and to compost you shall return, right?
That's right.
Hopefully.
Carbon and nitrogen in the end.
Well, perfect. We will wrap this up
We
here
better.
today. And we might get too philosophical on our growing indoor herbs section. So let me bring everybody in here for a second. But
Bring
try
me
it
in.
out. If you can't find any because it's the dead of winter and you can't find any plants, definitely try some seeds, but don't be too hard on yourself. Or find a friend that is overwintering some of their herbs and be like, can I just
Has
get a
some
little
mint.
bit of that? I just get a
Yeah.
little bit, a little something, something. We hope you enjoy it. Get some freshness into your meals, maybe, or your waters if you're into that kind of thing. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hort Culture Podcast. You can also shoot us an email if you have questions. You're like, I think I want to buy this weird indoor growing kit. What are your all's thoughts on this? We can give you that non-biased, good extension support that way. So feel free to shoot us an email, and that is in the show notes. But we thank you guys for being here with us today, and we hope you'll join us next time. Have a great one.